When shadow creep and the crops lay dry and bare, we drive the madness, but no one let a care. Lust, blind of vision, heart twisted, no more giving. In this world of despair, where's the day of being of living? Your hoochie truth will shine, cutting through. With thee will cease his kingdom anew.
Welcome back to another episode of Exiled Strangers. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the podcast, we do this anonymously. So if you're watching on video or anything like that, you're going to notice that you can't tell who is who. And that's for a reason, because the point of this podcast is about the message and the word and not about us individuals necessarily. Now, today we're going to be talking about how to prepare. Now, a previous podcast, we talked about why you should prepare as believers, but this episode, we're going to be talking about how to prepare. Things that we learned up in North Carolina during the disaster relief there, and just, experience. That's what we're basing these on. And it's not going to be like a complete comprehensive guide of like everything that you need to do to prepare. And we're also not going to be trying to sell you guys a bunch of crap either. This is just honest information on how to get you and your family prepared for times of disaster. Now, before we get into that, how are you doing, Nobody?
I'm doing all right, and hello, human beings. How are you all?
Yeah. And we also do testimonies on this podcast. And if you want to sign up to give your testimony, then shoot us an email at exiledstrangers@proton.me. That's exiledstrangers@proton.me if you want to sign up and give your testimony on the podcast. And we'd absolutely love to have you. So with that being said, are there any notes that we should bring up before we get into the topic? Any housekeeping?
I'll just add this too. Like, we can most definitely, we want to host people's testimonies. We overcome through keeping the commands of our Father Yahweh, through the priesthood of our high priest Yahusha, and also by the word of our testimony. So it's extremely important. But also, if there's some brothers or sisters out there who have been down a specific topic of study or have been given certain revelations they believe is proven by Scripture, hit us up. If you want to come on here and just talk about something awesome the Father has showed you that's going to benefit and edify the body, like, let us know, and we'll do a cool episode. So
absolutely. And if you completely disagree with everything we're saying, we're open to hosting debates as well.
You want to come on?
We've talked about it before. We've talked about it before, and I'll be moderator, and nobody will debate whoever it is, because he is better versed in scripture and stuff like that. I'm not in a position where I can debate just yet, but I can definitely play moderator for sure.
Just if you want to come on and just tell us how bad we suck, you can do that too. That's fine. Like, you can say whatever you want, like,
you can also do that through email though. You ain't got to come on and do that. You can do that through email.
That might be an entertaining episode though. Just someone just letting us have it.
Just taking a dump on the podcast.
Yeah.
Oh man. But that brings me to another point. Guys, remember, if you haven't already, or even if you already have, go ahead and give us like a rate and review on whatever podcast player you're listening to. If you're on YouTube, give us the thumbs up, or the thumbs down if you want to. That's fine too. But also leave a comment. Tell us what you're thinking. If there are any points that stick out to you or anything like that, then leave it down below in the comment section. So, with that being said, I think we can move on into the topic. What do you think?
Yeah. Let's get into it, man.
So, before we start reading the scripture, and the scriptures are going to show us, it's a little bit of a recap of the previous episode. I hear again and again the excuse to not prepare from believers is that Jesus is just going to come and save them. And I'm using the name Jesus because that's the name they use whenever they're, talking about this. They constantly say like, oh, I don't need to prepare. Jesus is going to come save me. And if things get too bad, then it's, I'm going to be getting like raptured out of here and I won't have to go through any of the suffering. I wholeheartedly disagree. I think there's time and time again in the Bible that tells you, hey, prepare for bad times. Like, bad times are going to come. There's evil in this world. They're plotting against you. You should prepare for those very things. And we're going to bring up a couple of scriptures real quick that just kind of back that up. And then we're going to get into the like how to prepare aspect of the podcast.
Well,
But the first
let me.
scripture. Oh, go ahead.
Whoa, bro. Whoa, bro.
Oh, my
Whoa.
bad. My bad.
Sorry.
I'm overly caffeinated. All that. You
I
got to
know.
slow me down on this one.
No, I stepped on you, and hey, my bad. But check
You
this
good?
out. In regards to this rapture doctrine that everybody's been taught, they have caused
Mm-hmm.
you to become like literally the sheep led to slaughter. Like, you know,
Yes.
you don't need to lay down and roll on your back and just let evil devour you. Okay. And a lot of people don't think of it like that because they're like, no, we're gonna get like just beamed up and watch everybody else suffer because we are more righteous than they. And that's not the case. In Second Thessalonians chapter 2, starting at verse 3, let no one deceive you in any way, because the falling away is to come first, and the man of lawlessness is to be revealed, the son of of destruction or perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called Elohim or that is worshipped, so that he sits as Elohim in the dwelling place of Elohim, showing himself that he is Elohim. Yeah, do you not remember that I told you this while I was still with you? Like, Paul's like, ah. But look, and then the dwelling place of Elohim, guess what? We're told that we are the dwelling place of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. It's where the Father sets his name, not where man places the Father, right? No one can tell the Father where to go. So I'm
Right.
just saying, none of this happens. This regathering. I don't even like using the word rapture. This regathering doesn't happen until the great falling away, which I would wager has already been taking place for a while. But that son of perdition, that last king, is revealed and starts to march on his march.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
gonna
I think
experience it,
that
people.
was perfect. Yeah, that was perfect. That is absolutely perfect. So if you need further proof to prepare, here's Proverbs, and we're in chapter 6. And we're going to be going through verses 4 through about 15, I think. And this is also going to be from the Septuagint. Now, what's interesting is that the Septuagint and the Masoretic seem to be giving very similar messages. It's just worded differently.
Yeah.
So, starting in verse 4, actually, it says, give not sleep to thine eyes, nor slumber with thine eyelids, that thou mayest deliver thyself as a doe out of the toils, and as a bird out of a snare. Go to the ant, O sluggard, and see and emulate his ways, and become wiser than he. For whereas he has no husbandry, nor anyone to compel him, and is under no master, he prepares food for himself in the summer, and lays by abundant store in harvest. Or go to the bee and learn how diligent she is, and how earnestly she is engaged in her work, whose labor kings and private men use for health, and she is desired and respected by all. Though weak in body, she is advanced by honoring wisdom. How long will thy lie, O sluggard, and when wilt thou awake out of sleep? Thou sleepest a little, and thou restest a little, and thou slumberest a short time, and thou foldest thine arms over thy breast a little. Then poverty comes upon thee as an evil traveler, and want as a swift courier. But if thou be diligent, thine harvest shall arrive as a fountain, and poverty shall flee away as a bad courier. A foolish man and a transgressor goes in ways that are not good, and the same winks with the eye, and makes a sign with his foot, and teaches with the beckonings of his fingers. His perverse heart devises evils at all times. Such a one causes troubles to a city. Therefore his destruction shall come suddenly, overthrow, and irretrievably ruin. So right there, that shows right there, like, hey, Solomon is telling you, like, hey, Be like the bee. Be like the ant. They're under no master, and they are constantly putting food back for like times that they can't put food back.
Yeah.
And he's also telling you, don't be lazy. Like, I don't know if this is the message he was trying to get across necessarily, but what sticks out in my mind when it says, oh, where is it? Thou sleepest a little, thou restest a little, and thou slumberest a short time. Well, a little here, a little there, a little here equals like a lot. So if you're constantly just doing short little breaks and short little rests, that's going to equal like a long time of just doing nothing. And then the result of that is that poverty comes upon thee as an evil traveler. Like, it just arrives at your front door if you're constantly lazy and if you're constantly not working or putting back like the worker bee or the ant.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wisdom in just that short little passage right there. But right there, it tells you like, hey, there's evil preparing against you. Prepare for the fact that they're preparing against you.
Which is where we find ourselves today. I mean,
Yeah.
make
His
no
perverse
mistake.
heart devises evils at all times. Such a one causes troubles to a city. Like, it's not going to just be you that is struggling, but it is going to be your city that is struggling, or your nation that is struggling,
Or the whole world.
or the whole world. Yeah,
it's getting wild, man. We're going to see some stuff in the coming days that we never imagined. You know, like I have been reading prophecy and I'm like, yeah, I'm ready for this. And now that I start to see things unfold, I'm like, oh, wow. Like, that's, I don't know. Like, wow, I didn't expect that. That's crazy.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. It's weird. It's one thing to think you're right, and then it's another thing to be confirmed that you are right.
Yeah, it's humbling. You're like, oh, geez. Like,
Yeah.
this is going to hurt a
Yep.
little bit. But no,
And
I
then
agree with
you wanted
bro.
to get into. Oh yeah, yeah. I think that like there's just little tidbits that just tell you to prepare. Like, hey, life as a believer, you're gonna have enemies. You should prepare for the fact that you have enemies.
Yeah.
Or even worse than that, you have entities and principalities that are completely indifferent to your existence. Like,
Yeah.
they don't love you, they don't hate you, they're just completely indifferent to your existence, and they're gonna push out um their wants and their plans and preparations despite your existence.
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely. They
look
hate
at
our stinking guts.
like North Carolina. That whole disaster that's going on up there, that has been going on up there, is a sign or a shown like indifference. They don't care about those people one way or the other. They don't love them, they don't hate them, they just are indifferent towards their entire
Hmm.
existence, which is why they're receiving no help.
Yeah. That's so like when you just remind me of it again, like the things we witnessed, it's like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like,
It's like of indifference. Is that what you're talking about? Like the
yeah.
signs of indifference that are shown there?
Yeah.
Okay. The Okay, so one thing that stands out was the vaccination tents that immediately popped up. That right there, like, like of everything that's going on right here, you're worried about people getting the flu? Like, how about a roof over their head, or food, or like shelter, or water, like clean water, actually clean water? Like, there's that right there shows a sign of indifference, or having the illegal immigrants that are working in these contaminated disaster zones. That's showing an indifference towards that population that they hired for this work. They didn't use any locals for that. They don't have locals going down there by nuclear fuels cleaning up. No, those are all people who don't speak English, that are from a different country, that can't communicate to the local populace like, hey, my toenails are falling off for some reason.
Yeah, they're all about to get
Like,
rounded up anyways. They're
yep,
expendable.
exactly. Yeah. They're
Not
using an
not our
expendable
words.
population.
Yeah, but
Yeah, yeah. This isn't what we're calling them, but this is what
yeah.
they're being used as. Like, and especially in that part of North Carolina and Tennessee, the Department of Transportation is like a coveted job. Like, that's a government job for those people there, that it's stable, it's always going to be there, and it pays well for the surrounding area. Like, those are coveted jobs there. You don't see, prior to this disaster, you did not see illegal immigrants working in those positions. Like, they would work in some construction jobs and stuff like that, but largely that's an area that does not have a lot of illegal migrants like they do in like parts of Texas or even other parts of North Carolina or Tennessee. Um, like
Yeah.
those, like if you saw somebody in the Department of Transportation, they were a local. They were a United States American and probably got the job because they had an ancestor or that had the job. Like they had a dad or a granddad that worked in the job. Like these are coveted positions in that area. Oh man. Sorry for ranting, dude. It feels like I've been ranting for the past 16 minutes. This is going to be
No.
another episode where I apparently get fired up.
Hey, that's
Maybe I should
okay.
limit the amount of caffeine.
No. Pump it up more caffeine.
All
You know,
right.
we gotta be passionate. You know, this is the thing. Like, it's Proverbs saying, "Don't be a sluggard, don't be lazy." You know, we look at what we talked about the last episode when Joseph was in Egypt. Like, he diligently stored the grain and whatever
Yeah.
necessities they needed, so that they would be ready for the years of famine. This wasn't kind of like a half-ass approach at it. Like, he was diligently working and had a plan.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, let me jump
Absolutely.
into Luke 22. So this is another aspect of it, and this is words from our Messiah, because many people get the instructions out of the testimonies of the apostles and the words of our Messiah, especially words of Paul, to say that, like, hey, just roll over and die. And that's not the
Yeah.
case at all. So here is our Messiah, Yahusha, talking in Luke 22, starting at 35. And it says, "And he said to them, when I sent you without purse and bag and sandals, did you lack any? And they said, none at all. And he said to them, but now let him who has a purse take it, and likewise also a bag. And let him who has no sword sell his garment and buy one. For I say to you that what has been written has yet to be accomplished in me. And he was reckoned with the lawless ones." So it's Isaiah 53 there. "For that which refers to me has an end too. And they said, Master, look, here are 2 swords. But he said to them, that is enough." So this is literally the word used here for sword means a sword, a cutting instrument, a knife, a dirk. A dirk is literally for fighting. War, sword. Yeah. So, interesting point here, and we'll get to this when we get to the defensive tools portion of this podcast. But they said we have 2 swords, like within the group, and he said that's enough. So that's something to take into account. I know most groups have more weapons or swords, if you will, to where, like, you can't even carry all that's owned by the group. You know what I mean? You can't even use it all.
Right.
But
Yeah. But
anyways,
I think it gives you also a good like understanding of maybe the defensive weapons shouldn't be your primary focus. Like,
right.
are they great to have? Absolutely. Are they
Yeah.
handy when it comes to defending yourself? Absolutely. But is that something you should primarily focus on if it happens less often than some of the other issues that we'll discuss? It's like there are some people that get into the preparedness movement and their only focus is like the guns that they have, the types of guns that they have, the attachment that they have on the guns, and they have all these guns, but it's only one person able to shoot them. Like that,
Yeah.
you get to a point where you're like, all right, are guns fun? Absolutely. And I'm not dogging anybody who has guns as like a hobby or some fun thing or anything like that. But in terms of preparedness, it's lower on the totem pole than some of these other things.
Yeah. You only got 2 hands.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so
Yeah.
the people that prepared in North Carolina, How often did a gun come in handy in their preparedness efforts?
Yeah, I saw everybody. Well, not everybody. I saw a lot of people carrying a pistol on their hip. They never left the holster.
Yep.
Praise Yah, praise Yah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's one of those
There
things.
were
It's like
even
it.
looters.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it's one of those things that I think in this case here, the Messiah is like, hey, you may need this. You gotta like have this on reserve, and then you can stop focusing on it and focus on what's important. You know. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
There were even looters in the area, and that was handled and taken care of without the use of any kind of weapons. Um, I mean, the sheriff's office came in and took care of them, but that could also be an example of like needing a weapon because after the disaster, looters came in, started taking stuff, and they might take stuff that is definitely yours. I think some of that looting was just like, oh, let's see what washed up on the river type thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but either way, that was taken care of, and thankfully, there was very, very little violence going on in the rural parts. Now, if you go more into the Asheville part of the city, then you have examples of more violence going on and stuff like that. But in the rural parts, very little violence was occurring.
Yeah.
Um,
Everybody was pretty cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So now we have permission and a charge to prepare from the Bible. Now we can start getting into the actual preparedness aspects, and we have it, blocked into different sections and stuff like that, and different topics. So the first topic that I've written down is food. You obviously need to put back food, uh, for you, your family, and everybody who's going to be coming to your house or your location during times of disaster. So,
Yeah.
you got anything you want to add to the food?
I mean, a quick overview, if you don't mind. Um,
Mm-hmm.
at least it's my train of thought, and I think a lot of people I've heard kind of echo this same thing. It's like when you're looking at what food to put back and what like supplies as far as even drinks and everything else, like get stuff that you like, you know, like
Yeah.
in these situations, think about it. Your morale is already going to be at an all-time low. So being able to have that hot cup of coffee, caffeine's like a great tool, but just in general, it's a mental thing. Um, it's like something that will lift morale, that'll, bring a little brightness to your morning there. Um,
Yeah.
I've put back a ton of coffee, you know?
Yeah. And then I think there's one of those websites that has like freeze dried instant coffee in bulk. It's like where I heard it was actually Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis. It was like his prepare with Ground Zero type, but it's that company. Like I think they set up websites for each person who is affiliated, but they have like 25-year coffee basically. Like it's good to go.
Okay.
It'll last 25 years, and then you can use it whenever you need to within those 25 years. Um, but yeah, that's a very good point. Put back stuff that tastes good that you like. Um, Now you have a couple different options. You could go with canned goods. So some of the canned goods actually, they don't taste too bad, and they're already prepared for you. It's already canned for you. It's good to go. Make sure you're putting back cans that don't have that pop top lid. Make sure you have to have like a can opener to open those canned goods because the shelf life on pop top lids goes way way down.
Yeah.
Now the downside of canned goods is that they're heavy. So if you have to pack up and go to a different location, canned goods are pretty doggone heavy, and you're not going to be able to easily pack those up and carry what you need and carry a lot with you. Which leads me into like dehydrated or freeze dried food, which is,
Yeah.
I think, fantastic. Like you have a freeze dryer. Have you guys gotten to use it yet
On some candy. Um,
on some candy?
yeah, we're just getting
Yeah.
started with it, so we're learning it, and it's fun. It's like I think we have like kind of an idea of what we want to do next, and we already have freeze dried stuff put away that we purchased.
Yeah.
But now being able to do it ourselves, that's a whole different aspect that is open to us now. It's super light.
Absolutely.
It gets sealed up in these little bags. You can carry a ton of meals if you had to bounce out on foot. And remember, like, you can survive on a little amount of food. So even splitting these meals between 2 or 3 people, you're going to survive. It may not be pleasant, but like you can
Mm-hmm.
you can do it. And freeze dried
Yeah,
food,
you're counting calories at that point.
yeah, but freeze dried food, it actually tastes like good. It's the same food you would make in a meal, and you can just, you know, put it back to where
Yeah.
it's stable. I mean,
And unlike dehydrated food, freeze dried food still keeps most of the water soluble nutrients in it. So, like dehydrated food, a lot of the water soluble nutrients, like the vitamins, the minerals, and all that stuff, anything that dissolves into water, is going to leave the food after you dehydrate it. Cool thing about freeze drying food is that like 90% of the nutrients within that food stays in that food.
yeah,
And there's also foods that you can freeze dry that you can't dehydrate, and vice versa. I mean, freeze drying is basically dehydrating, but using a different method to dehydrate.
yeah,
Um, both are absolutely wonderful. The downside of that, though, with the freeze dried food, is that it's a bit cost prohibitive. Like the freeze dryer machine is about $3,500 if you buy a brand new one. A dehydrator is way cheaper. You can get a pretty decent one for like $100 to a couple $100. But there's that downside of the dehydrated aspect, is that anything water soluble is going to leave the food. But freeze dried food is cost prohibitive, and there's more than just the price of the machine. There's the constant purchasing you have to do for the Mylar bags. So you have to keep buying new Mylar bags. You can either make them or you can purchase them yourself. But the oxygen absorbers, you have to add those to the freeze dried food. So if you take that in comparison to canning, you can reuse cans. You can reuse the lids on the cans. You can reuse the
sure.
rings on the cans over and over again. You can't do that so much with the Mylar bags. Eventually, you'll just you can keep resealing it if you want to, but eventually you'll just run out of bag, and the oxygen absorbers will eventually absorb their max limit for oxygen. So
Well,
those
and
are
then
just things to consider.
and here's the thing too. Yeah, you're right. Like the machine itself is costly. Um, but if you have say you have a group like your family unit, or even just a group of like people you trust, if you guys all go in on it, like, and you guys are all turning out good packages of food, like there's possibilities. Um,
Absolutely.
if you just want to invest and you find a company who already makes them, like just and you want to pick up freeze dried food, it's a good idea. You can even just, it may not be the most pleasant thing in all cases, but you can just munch on it dried. You don't have to rehydrate it,
Yeah,
Um,
totally. Totally. And in fact, some of the foods that you freeze dry is more fun to eat it dry than it is like the rehydrated version, like some of the candy you were talking about.
oh, dude,
Um,
and okay, in a survival situation, someone might say like, "Oh, you don't need no candy." I beg to differ. Okay,
oh yeah,
like,
I was gonna get into that. Yeah.
oh, you go for it then. Yeah,
No. Oh, just morale items like candy. Candy
yeah,
will boost, especially if you have kids with you, and they're like seeing all this stuff and they don't really know how to comprehend what's going on and all that stuff. If you can provide candy, that's gonna help them out so much more. Also, another morale item. Oh, candy is also a bartering item too. But another bartering slash morale item could be alcohol. And there's also like other first aid benefits of using alcohol and stuff like that. But like alcohol in those times, by no means am I like, saying that people should start getting lit whenever the world's ending.
right.
But like it's a very valuable bartering item and commodity that you could use for other things in those times.
Yeah, like, but for real, food is such a big morale. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, you'd be
And
going
and
like,
there's
go ahead.
there's benefits to the freeze dried version versus the canned version. Like the freeze dried version, you're a little limited on what you can freeze dry, and with canned goods, you're still kind of limited on what you can and can't freeze dry. But think of it this way: like I get 4 calories per gram of protein and carbohydrates. So for 1 gram of protein, I get 4 calories. For 1 gram of carbs, I get 4 calories. For 1 gram of fat, I get 9 calories. So I want to put an emphasis on high fat foods. Now, high fat foods are something that are difficult to freeze dry. Fat doesn't freeze dry very well. What I can do though is combine my freeze dried goods with my canned goods, and then I have the best of both worlds. I have a bunch of lightweight food that can travel quickly, and I have a bunch of canned goods that are going to be nutrient dense because of the amount of fat. And like if you don't want to can that, there are some shelf stable fats that you can get. For example, coconut oil. Coconut oil is one of the cheaper fats that you can get that's going to be shelf stable. Ghee is another one, a little bit less of a shelf life, but still very good. You can clarified butter. That's another fat you can use. Also, peanut butter. That's super high in fat. You can put that back, and it can stay good for quite some time.
No, like beef
but
tallow.
I would put
like
an
that.
emphasis on fats. Yeah, beef tallow. Yeah, absolutely. Can that and put it up, and then you're good for a long time. I would put a high emphasis on good fats.
Sure. And if you, I mean, like, think about it. A lot of these, like, freeze-dried foods, when you rehydrate, like, a lot of the ones I've eaten are, like, stews and stuff like that. I mean, put you a little dollop of beef tallow in there, you know? Maximize that thing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But, like, with
some of the
yummy... Sorry. Oh, no.
No, you're good. Do your thing.
Oh, no.
Good. You good.
Stepping on toes.
You're good. Do your thing.
With the little yummy treats, you know, it's a big deal. Like even on like deployment and stuff, it's like, oh, dead body, bombed out car, ooh, a piece of candy, you know, like it's a big deal, you know.
Ooh, piece of candy.
Ooh, piece of candy. Yeah. And
now,
then your whole day
another
turns
thing. There you go. There you go. Now, another thing that a lot of people overlook when it comes to putting back food is that they put back the okay, let's say you put back a bunch of wheat berries, which is like a shelf-stable version of flour. It's the unground flour, basically, wheat berries. And then you put back a bunch of rice, you put back a bunch of beans. You have the bulk calories taken care of. Now, plain rice by itself is going to get old very, very quick. So think of ways to like flavor that. Spices, they store very, very well. Salt stores very, very well. Even hot sauce. Hot sauce doesn't do too bad when it comes to shelf stableness and stuff like that. So think about those things as well. Like, okay, salt should be a main thing that you put back because that's something a lot of us don't consume enough of is actual good salt. And I'm not talking about like the sodium additives that they add to like processed foods and stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like good like Himalayan pink salt, Celtic sea salt, just good sea salt if you can find it, stuff like that. Redmond's is a really good form of salt. But you can replace those electrolytes, those vitamins and minerals that you're depleting if you're in a position of, if you're in a scenario where, it's disaster time and whatnot. So keep those things, like, remember, have a diversity of prepared, put back food. Real quick, a tip on the freeze dryer. In fact, you might like this. A super efficient way to actually put back food and keep it stored and protected from the freeze dryer or after the freeze dryer is just like, let's say you're cooking dinner, just cook like a double batch of dinner. And then that way, like, you're not making separate meals for the freeze dryer necessarily. You're just making a bigger meal, and whatever you guys don't consume just goes to the freeze dryer. You could just freeze dry leftovers if you wanted to. And that's like a constant stream of putting back food that you can follow. And it's not like it's super laborious. You're not doing any extra work, really. You're just doing more of what you're already doing and then putting back the extra.
Yeah, I like that. I think that that sounds completely sustainable. You know, like you're not burning yourself out, but you're diligently keeping up on your tasks. You know, um,
Absolutely.
I dig that.
You're becoming the ant and the worker bee by doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so, and then you can, as far as food goes, you can get into the natural path for a serious preparedness person is that they eventually get into homesteading. So thinking about resupply of your food, and it kind of depends on which disaster you're preparing for. If you're comparing like for a complete global, shutdown, then you might want to start thinking about like, okay, how do I resupply the food that I've put back? And then you get into chickens, you get into, sheep, you get into cows, you get into gardening, orchards, and stuff like that. And that might, I think we should probably do a future episode on that.
Sure. Yeah.
Talking about how to solidify some of your resupply for your food stocks and stuff. But just for now, just keep that in the back of your mind. Like, hey, eventually the food that I put back, the supplies that I put back is going to run out. How do I supplement that, or how do I add back to it? And stuff like that. But
I mean, that's huge though. You know, that's
yeah,
for long-term sustainability, like that's key. You have to be focusing on that. And really, I know, sorry, I know you said we're going to
you're good.
get into this later, but you could still do this even if you live like in an apartment. There's still things you can grow on your porch
Absolutely.
or whatever. Like, don't feel limited
In your
because where
closet.
you're at. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember seeing, what was it? That Doomsday Preppers show. I remember seeing that like years ago, and there was a guy on there who was in actually Leicester, North Carolina, which is not far from where we were doing the disaster stuff. And his goal, his plan, if things were to be bad, was that he was going to survive off algae, basically spirulina, and he had these fish tanks where he was just growing spirulina, and then he'd pull it out, then he'd dry it, and then he'd leave it in this powder form, throw it in the oxygen absorber, and then that's something that he could go back to and eat as he needed. Super high in nutrients, complete protein, stuff like that. So there's loopholes. There's mushrooms. You could grow mushrooms. There's a bunch of different options, even if you are stuck in an apartment, and you don't necessarily have to own the land to farm it. I mean, there's a bunch of national parks where people are out there growing weed. I'm sure they wouldn't mind if you added some tomatoes to the mix.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
right. They're like, oh, this is a pleasant surprise. Tomato plant.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But that's,
I mean,
like,
but those are options.
yeah, another thing too is like regional based foraging, like learning that, which I'm sure
Yeah.
I would love for you to head up an episode on that. That would be really beneficial. But,
Absolutely. Yeah, we can go over some, like, if you're in North America, some very common plants that are going to be good to eat. Yeah, we could totally do that. Cool thing about North America is that it's very, very diverse, but it's not like too diverse. Like, there are still some pretty common plants that kind of occur throughout the whole of North America. Especially if you kind of constrict it a little bit and focus on just the United States. There's some plants that we can definitely point out that are going to grow in your area. But yeah, that's what I got for food. You got anything else to add to food?
I mean, no, I think that's a good overview. Really,
Yeah.
this is just kind of to provoke thought, right? To get the wheels turning,
Right.
and to motivate people to take a look at their surrounding situation, like where they live, where they, what they're capable of doing on which budget, and just working it in. There's ways to do this that isn't like going to break your wallet.
Yeah.
So
It could be something as simple as like, okay, I'm going to the grocery store to pick up some cans of soup. Well, I'm going to get like 4 extra cans of soup to put back, or just buying like double of some of the staples that you go through. Like, pay
Yeah.
attention to what you actually use, pay attention to what you actually cook with, and then just buy extra of that. And it doesn't have to be like a full blown like disaster that you're preparing for, like something where like civilization completely collapses. It could be a situation like during COVID where you couldn't get toilet paper for like 2 weeks, and you just put stuff back to get by there. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
it could
dude.
be any number of things that you're preparing for.
The
Yeah,
lockdowns during
and in
that
that point,
messed up a lot of people. Like there's
oh dude,
some serious like mental
oh dude.
scarring from COVID.
Bro, I went to an estate sale here close to me not too long ago. It was a couple months ago, I should say. Um, and the lady just had a full closet dedicated to paper towels and toilet paper. Like, I don't know what happened to her during COVID when she couldn't get toilet paper, but whatever happened was never going to happen again.
Yeah.
She was stocked forever.
Yeah, she was not having it. She had an uncomfortable booty during that time.
Yeah, yeah. Whatever happened to her, she vowed it was never going to happen again. And she had a whole closet dedicated, like, not one of those small closets. Like, you could step into the closet and walk down the closet, that type of closet, like one of those big walk ins, and just floor to ceiling toilet paper and paper towels. It
But
was
bro,
amazing.
and that's awesome. Like if someone feels led to do that because they're like, oh, not again, not today, Satan.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stock up on this toilet paper. That's a big morale boost because guess what? I don't want to break the news, but everybody poops.
Everybody.
Everybody. I know a lot of the women out
Everybody.
there are like, we don't. Yes, you do. Okay.
Yep. Yep. Some of y'all be painting bowls out there, but don't want to admit it.
Oh man.
You know what? Okay. Here's a little, side note to back that point up. Dude, when I was a lifeguard in high school, I was a lifeguard at the public pool in high school.
Yeah.
Like at the end of every day, we'd have to go through and clean the facilities. The women's bathroom was always foul, like always disgusting. Like, women have the ability to produce smells that men have never even thought of before. And that's exactly what they were doing at the public bathroom. And dude, oh my goodness. Yeah, women have the ability to be way more disgusting than any guy could. That's for sure.
And it's like Dale Earnhardt won the race and did burnouts all over the bowl.
Bro. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
hey,
Yeah.
this is life, everybody. This is life.
Oh man. All right, so moving on into water and water procurement and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
the way I view it, you have a couple different options. You could now water is something that's a little odd to store. It's it's heavy. B, it can go bad. It can go stale. But it's something that you can store to a certain extent. So, Earthship biotexture. I don't know if anybody's heard of Earthships before or anything like that, but they're completely off grid in a high altitude desert in Taos, New Mexico, where they get literally like one rain event per year, and they're getting about 7 to 14 inches of rain during that one rain event. And with that one rain event, they're able to store enough water to last them until the next rain event. So each Earthship has two 2,000-gallon tanks that captures all of the water that hits the roof of their Earthship. And 4,000 gallons seems, with the appropriate rationing and just being conscious and stuff like that with your water and being appropriate with your water, they're able to make it last, like 4,000 gallons, they're able to make it last a year. And they're also, cool thing about Earthship is they also use the water 4 times before it exits. So it comes down, hits the roof, and then it goes to like drinking water, stuff you shower with and all that stuff. And then from there, hits the drain, goes into the front raised beds of the greenhouse, which is in the Earthship. If you're unfamiliar with Earthship, check them out, and this imagery will make sense to you. It goes to the front beds of the house. Your gray water goes and waters the plants that are in the front beds of your house. And then from that, it goes to your toilet tank. And you use the used gray water, the cleaned gray water, to flush your toilet with. Because nobody really thinks about this, but you don't need clean water to flush your toilet.
Yeah.
Like, you know what's in the toilet? You don't have to use clean water to flush it.
Yeah, it's
And
already
then
dirty.
from there, yeah. And then from there, it goes and waters your trees that are outside. Now, you can use black water to water fruit trees because of the long filter and the long straw that the water actually goes through before getting to the fruit of the actual tree. So it's safe to use black water as long as it's like human-based black water. Now, if you're pouring like bleach and stuff like that down your drains, then you don't want to use that black water.
Yeah.
If you're pouring like vinyl chloride down your drains, then you don't want to use that in black water to water trees or anything like that. But yeah, put back, like, capture the water that hits your roof. It makes sense. It doesn't make sense to not do that. Like, it's free water that's falling off the sky, and if you don't capture it, then it's just hitting the watershed and going down the Mississippi and all of that. But let's say, so that was one thing in North Carolina I noticed that nobody really prepared for. Nobody put
Bro,
back clean water.
I got a question. Like,
Yeah.
after all that, like, where was everybody pooping at? Like, that's something that's puzzled me since then. Like,
That's a
you
good
know,
point. I don't know.
I mean, because like,
No.
I imagine that we'd at some point over there, we'd turn a corner and someone's just like outside, doing their business. And I never saw that. Like everybody, was just making it happen. I don't know.
The composting toilets are an option, but I'm not sure everybody was aware of that being an option, dude. I really don't know. They may have just found a bucket and just kept dropping dumps in the bucket, maybe. I don't know. That
Look,
bucket gets funky real quick.
yeah, but check it out. Okay, so look, everybody's always like, "Oh, I don't want to poop outside. I don't want to do this." It is awesome.
Yeah.
All right. If you want to start your day off right, you got the wind coming by you, birds chirping in the trees, and you're making your tummy feel better. Like it's just a win-win situation.
Absolutely. Yeah, pooping outside is awesome.
Yeah, it's so freeing. Like you want to talk about freedom, right? Every American should be pooping outside every now and then. Especially like you get out there and then this bald eagle flies over, just you're like, yeah, yeah, that's good morning, eagle.
Oh man, yeah, you catch the breeze in places that haven't felt breeze in a while. Remind you that those parts are there. Yeah, man.
Air it out. But okay, my bad.
Air it out.
We got back on the pooping.
You're good. Water. But yeah, in North Carolina, because it's a temperate rainforest and it rains so frequently there, and there's water, there's springs, there's all kinds of forms of water everywhere in that part of North Carolina, nobody really thought about putting it back. Like even the preparedness people that were ready for an event like this, I mean, as ready as you could be, nobody put back water because it was so abundant in that area. Well, what happens when that water that you had planned for becomes contaminated with, I mean, any number of things? Like septic tanks get washed down, weird barrels from Oak Ridge starts popping up, all types of stuff. Or even like any kind of manufacturers that are alongside the river, any chemicals they were using got dumped into the river. So what happens when that water becomes contaminated? Then you need an alternate means of procuring water, like a way to either filter it or purify it or distill it or any number of things. Just like and this is largely going to be dependent upon where you are located. Let's say you're getting your water from a well, then okay, and the power goes out. How are you going to power that well? Will your generator power that well? Is your well too deep and it actually requires 240 and your generator only produces 120? Do you need to get an appropriate dedicated generator for just your well? There's all the it really depends on where you are.
Sure. Like hand pumps. Like, do you have a hand pump that you can go attach to your pipe and get it going? Yeah, there's a ton of considerations when it comes to that. And how long is your generator going to be able to keep running if you're not able to resupply with gas or whatever fuel you're using?
Yeah. Does it make sense to get a solar generator? And in that case,
Sure.
there's only one solar generator that I know of that actually produces 240. And that's the very, very large EcoFlow. It's like the Titan 5, I think, EcoFlow. Or is that Upus?
I don't
Yeah,
know,
I
but
know EcoFlow produces one that's 240. Whether it's called Titan, I'm not sure. No, that the Titan one is actually Upus. Which, fun little fact: Upus is the only solar generator company that was reached out to provide some help out in North Carolina, and they flat out did not. It was the only one that did not respond to the call. Jackery
uh-oh.
responded. EcoFlow responded. There were a couple other companies that responded, but Upus did not. So just keep that in mind whenever you're out there shopping for generators and whatnot.
Yeah. Um,
But yeah,
yeah. So water.
yeah.
Um, one thing around where I'm at, I like to adventure a lot, especially like I like to fish. I like to go creek fishing and such. But just
Hmm.
like get out in your local area to where you can and adventure and take note of what you see. Because like around me, I know of a few different water sources. I know of a natural spring that comes out of the rocks right by me. Stuff like that. And it's like secondary and tertiary means of water, but I have an idea of where to go to look for it if what I have on my property fails. So, yeah.
Absolutely. That's a good point. And then think of ways that you can, like, once you get your water, if it's contaminated, how do I purify it? So there's a couple different options. You can use like a Berkey filter if you wanted to. Now, keep in mind the filters are going to have to be replaced every once in a while, or you
Yeah.
can actually get a lot of life out of your Berkey filter if you just scrub your filters and like clean them every once in a while. Um, there's that. There's the very rudimentary filtration system where you like run it through sand and then charcoal and sand and charcoal and then you boil it afterwards. That's an
Yeah.
option. It's very slow, but it's an option. Um,
It
there's
works.
also like
Yeah.
life straws. Yeah, it works. There's also life straws, something that's small, portable, and you can drink directly from the source of water if need be. There's also something that's lighter and you can actually keep with you, but the chlorine dioxide tablets or the chlorine dioxide like liquid solutions, if you wanted to, those will help clean up water. And in fact, my pigs, I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast, but my pigs were sick a couple of weeks ago. And part of the protocol was actually using chlorine dioxide in one of their waterers. And the one
Yeah.
that I used the chlorine dioxide in, they completely drank it down to the bottom. One of the waterers completely drank it down to the bottom. Like they recognized it as something that was going to help them get over this sickness, and they just absolutely devoured it. Um,
And that's pretty
but
interesting. And
those are
by the
options.
way, we do promote biblically clean eating. Um,
Absolutely. The
the
pig
the
purchase was before I was following what the Bible actually said. Now I just have them using. I'm using them to clear new growth forest and get me access, so I can help clear land and turn it into pasture for sheep. They're actually preparing the property for sheep for the next iteration.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with them, as long as you're not eating them. They're
Yeah,
cool. They are cool
yeah,
animals. It's just
yeah. They are. They're fun to watch. They're funny. They're like view them as like 4-wheel drive dogs, like off road dogs that dig with their nose instead of their paws.
that's pretty
Yeah, they're
cool.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so you got anything else on water?
Um, I mean, like, so there's like a million ways to skin that cat, and it's really kind of just taking a look at your infrastructure, where you can catch water from, whether you're on a well or city. Like, just you got to look at your personal environment and come up with a plan. And 9 times out of 10, you'll be able to find somebody on the old, YouTube University that has a similar infrastructure that you can kind of mirror in most cases what they're doing if you don't know how to set
Yep.
that up. Um, but yeah, I mean, just remember, thinking outside the box usually gets you the biggest gains. So,
Oh yeah.
um, Yeah, just have fun
So
with
like
it.
you just said, there's a million ways to skin this cat. Make it a goal of yours to come up with like 3 solutions for this.
Yeah.
So that way, if one fails, you have 2 other options. If 2 fail, then you have 1 other option. And most of the time, that's going to be good enough for you. But make it a goal to come up with at least 3 solutions for your water. And let's put a goal on the food as well. So the food, make it a goal to come up with at least 6 months of food put back for each individual that's at your house. Then where I got 6 months of food is that worst case scenario in North America, no matter when the disaster hits, at the very longest, it's going to take me 6 months to get my first radish harvest. Which is the reason I say radishes is because it's a very fast growing vegetable. But at the very worst time possible, it's going to take me 6 months to produce my first radish harvest. So 6 months of food put back for each individual is a very good starting point. Keyword is starting point. Don't stop there, but that's a
Yeah.
very good starting point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well said.
So we have a goal for the food. We have a goal for the water. 6 months of food, 3 solutions for water. Now let's look into shelter.
Yeah.
Oh
This is
man.
kind of fun, right? Because like you don't know,
Yeah.
nobody knows where they'll be at or what circumstances will appear in any, you know, in any type of scenario. I mean, you could
Yeah.
be on a road trip, you could be hundreds of miles from where all your preps are from your home, and all of a
Yep.
sudden you're like, uh-oh, I got to get out of the elements. You know, so there's that aspect. Then there's like long term, if you're actually at your place of preparedness, where you know there's upkeep, there's certain things you need to build into your shelter that will benefit you in these situations.
Yeah. Or what
Yeah.
happens if your primary shelter gets washed down the river or gets burned up like in the California fires? Like, do you
Yeah.
have a plan B for shelter? Do you have a plan B that you can go to in case your main shelter gets wiped out? And there isn't like one like copy paste solution for this. This is just something that like each individual is going to have to figure out. Like, what happens if something happens to my home? Or is my home located in a very dangerous area? Let's say you're like middle of Atlanta. Like, is that someplace you want to stay, or is that someplace you would like to bug out from and
Bro,
prepare for your secondary? Yeah, even if there
even if
isn't a
there's
disaster, you
if
need to
there's
bug
not a
out of Atlanta.
disaster, I'm bugging out of Atlanta. Like, sorry, I love
Yeah.
everybody, all you guys that are there, but yeah, I'm I'm out.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Um yeah, the gay mafia is gonna get you if you don't.
Oh man, I'll tell you what. Like when it comes to shelter stuff, though, too, like make it a fun thing. Get your family, friends, whomever you're going to be, kind of whoever's like minded that wants to do this, and you know be part of this sustainment little group with you, and go out into whatever kind of wilderness you can get yourselves into, and try to make a structure, you know, have fun, learn these skills beforehand so that when it comes down to doing it for real, like you already kind of know what you got to do. Like I know for me,
Yeah.
if I have a knife and some cordage, then I can go make a temporary shelter anywhere. Like
Yeah.
it's
Absolutely. And it's fun. Like
yeah.
when you're outside the time of disaster, like you can make it like a fun little activity that you do with your kids. Like I can't wait till my kids are old enough so we can go out there and make some primitive shit. Oh, dude, we're gonna build some weird stuff, man. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
like we're gonna be, yeah. Anybody who goes out to the property, they're gonna be like, what? Who? What pile of wood are living out here? What's
There's
up
a
with all
bunch
these
of
random structures?
there's a bunch of hobbit houses all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. But
But
yeah, so
it is
just think of
fun.
it that
Yeah.
way. It is absolutely fun. Yeah, doing some bushcraft structures and stuff is so much fun. Um, so yeah, think of it that way. Like shelter, that's not really something we can give you to like we can give you information on the food, we can give you information on the water, but shelter is really going to be site dependent on like for you guys. Like that,
Yeah.
you're just going to have to look into it.
Yeah, and at some point, I imagine we'll be able to get some examples up. I don't know how we'll do that. We'll figure it out, but we'll get some examples on some of these things up on the YouTube channel just for funsies. But
Yeah.
I mean, you think
Yeah.
about it too. Like if you need a shelter to survive, get out of the elements, you're not building a shelter for living space. You're building one for like surviving space, just to get your body in that shelter.
It's not going to have rooms.
Hard. Yeah. I mean, you could if you got a little camp of people that you want to like sustain for a long time, and go ahead, knock yourselves out, have fun. But
so for that YouTube video we're going to do talking about the different shelters and stuff, we should format it in a way similar to like MTV Cribs.
Yeah. One of the shelters will be like, well, here it is. You lay down here. That's my crib. All right. Bye. Yeah.
Do it like the Chappelle version of MTV Cribs.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to talk about their shoe deal they got. I got a whole sweatshop in my closet.
Oh, man.
I put diamonds on my cereal to make my dookie twinkle. Oh, man.
Old comedy was so
2,000-year-old dinosaur egg.
Yeah.
It stank. Oh, man. All right. So that's shelter. On to the next one, which community. So a lot of, and I'm guilty of this myself before going to the disaster zone in North Carolina. Like I always thought, like in times of disaster, it's much easier for me to worry about myself and my family than it is to worry about, the intricacies of a community. Well, having looked at the disaster zone in North Carolina, I realized like how important it is to have that community put back, because you can't do everything. Like, you just can't. You just can't provide all of your own needs. You, as humans, we are built to need community. So yeah, like figure out who your neighbors are beforehand. Figure out who is of a similar mindset before the disaster happens. Like don't try to figure it out after the disaster, because it just makes everything sketchier, more dangerous, and stuff like that. Just try to figure out who lives near you, who is down, who's gonna, join your mutual assistance group in times of disaster before the disaster actually happens. And try to get a plan with them. Like practice these different skills with them. See if they want to team up on a food freeze dryer. See if like one of you guys' houses could be the alternate shelter in times of disaster. Let's say you don't live right next to each other, and one lives up on a mountain, the other one lives down in the city or something like that. Yeah, I mean the community is going to help with a lot. Let's say like one of the members of the community is a doctor, and another member of the community is really good at growing food, and the other another member of the community is a carpenter. Like try to acquire as many skills into your community as possible. A lot of people call these mutual assistance groups or MAG groups or MAGs. But yeah, I know one way that you could kind of get tied up with, and nobody and I actually just recently met these people, but one way you could get tied up with a local preparedness community is by joining American Contingency. You could get on there, see who's around you that is of the similar mindset, and see if they want to prepare with you. Or they might be a mentor, like somebody who's been doing this that you can glean from.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of organizations with a lot of knowledge and a lot of like people that are motivated. I think that's what it comes down to for me is if someone's willing to put in the time, into figuring these things out, into formulating plans, and actually putting, foot to pavement into getting these things done, they're already demonstrating the right mentality towards it, to where when you actually need to get it into enacting these plans and surviving, they're 9 times out of 10 they're probably going to be a good fit to the kind of mindset you need to have. Yeah.
Now, on the flip side, like, pay attention. If they're lazy now, they're not going to all of a sudden develop a work ethic after the disaster happens. Like, keep these things in mind. Like, test them out. Put them through a period of testing. Like, okay, do you actually know how to do some of the things you claim to do? How well do you operate under pressure? Like, are you just a good human being? Like, are you going to be one of those crappy marauders that goes around and stabs me in the back once your family's hungry? You know what? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, and okay, so you bring up a couple really good points. I think you and we experienced a situation on our first trip to North Carolina that we got to see each other's kind of mentality during a potentially dangerous situation, and it wasn't. It ended up being a nothing
Yeah.
burger, but we didn't know that
Yeah.
at the time. And I was like, "Oh, cool! I know my brother here is going to be like calm and collected." It felt good to know that.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, it was good. I was like, "Yeah, all right."
Okay, I got a question based off that. Okay, so if I had started freaking out and like panicking, if I had crashed through that pile of boxes like the other person did, would we be as good of friends if I failed that test right there?
Well, it's just a good thing that things worked out the way they did. All right. No, we'd have a need to grow, okay, to work out some things. But luckily everything went great,
Yeah, everything went just fine. Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh man.
Oh, that
You
was
can say
funny.
no, dude. It's okay. You can say no. You can be like, nah, we can't be friends after that.
Well, you know what? I don't have to worry about that, answering that question for real, because it was all good.
Yeah,
And here's the thing, like,
good.
you never know how someone's going to react, or, what emotions are going to be sparked up in people during times of stress or danger or whatever it is. And even if someone does have a negative reaction, right? Because they may have never experienced anything like that before, that's okay. Just realize that you have a part to play in that too. Like, you
Yeah.
can calm that person down and put them on a task. You can,
Mm-hmm.
get someone gainfully employed with solving whatever situation's in front of you, and that usually gets rid of the fear and anxiety. But yeah,
Yeah.
it is going to be a group effort into whatever is ahead of us. And so going back to, forming these groups, or, just like-minded individuals, family, friends, whatever it is, neighbors, you also do not need to tell people everything you have, where it's at, your combination to your safe. Like, be wise about it.
Absolutely.
Use discernment. Don't go and post all over social media, look, I just bought this 72-hour food box. Like, we're putting it back, everybody.
Yeah.
Check this out. Look at our stockpile. And I know people who do this, right? It's like they want that
Mm-hmm.
gratification from social media clicks, and they're not realizing that they just put a huge target on their backs, like.
Absolutely. Yeah. And speaking of that 72-hour box that you were going back to the food just briefly, if you look at those like emergency preparedness buckets, like the ones you can just buy at Bass Pro or anything like that, you'll realize like a lot of those calories are in the form of drink mixes. So when you're doing that, just be cautious. Like, look at the actual contents of those buckets before purchasing any of those buckets. Like, okay, am I getting like 500 calories of like rice and beans, and then the rest is just like hot chocolate? It's something to take into consideration. Is like, am I actually getting decent calories in the form that I actually want when I purchase this bucket, or do I need to go find somebody else? So just keep those in mind. Like, a lot of those calories are just in the form of like strawberry drink mixes or whatever, which isn't going to be that filling when the time comes. Like, you want food, not protein shakes.
Yeah.
Especially if it's already crappy outside.
Yeah.
So community. Build the community now. Do it beforehand. And train with your community. Like, a good example of people who train with the community is the Midwest Preparedness Project over there. Like, every month they have like a primitive camping time allotted where they go out there and they do the camp. And if you miss X amount throughout the year, then you're kind of kicked out of the group because you're not taking this seriously, type of thing. Yeah, check out Midwest Preparedness and how they organize all that. And I think that's a good, standard to keep up with.
Yeah. I mean, I could tell you that, like, there are some people that I was attempting to do some training with, and I care about these people. I love these people, and if they needed help, yeah, I would say that I would go and help them in a certain scenario, but I realize that I cannot count on them, so that's changed my whole mentality going forward. And it's also where I'm dedicating my time to now, as far as training. Like, I don't want to get in bad reps with people that just are, laughing it off. They're not taking it serious, and they're not putting in everything that they can and asking the questions and trying to learn every aspect of something so that it becomes muscle memory in the real world scenario.
Absolutely.
It's a growing process, and it's never going to be perfect. So don't expect perfection. Just what you should be looking for is the desire to get better. I can work with anybody who's trying to get better. It doesn't matter like who it is, what their skill level is. Like, if you're trying to get better, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, it's much easier to teach somebody, and it's much more satisfactory to teach somebody who wants to learn. If it feels like you're forcing this information on somebody, then that might not be a good candidate for your mutual assistance group or anything like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All righty.
Oh, and real quick, hold on. On the group too, like, it should be rooted in also, like, in scripture and these kind of belief sets. And don't get me wrong, there's a ton of groups out there that are not rooted at all in scripture. It's all physical things. But here we are promoting scriptural preparedness first, right? Like, your walk in faith and belief and your obedience to that, and then physical is secondary, right? Because we know that, like, we could run out of water, and on the third day when we're super parched and we're like, oh no, like, Yah can just make it rain. You know what I mean? Like, it's so. All right, that was all I had to say.
Facts. On that. No, great addition to that. Yeah, and because it's easy to get caught up in the actual physical part and be like, oh, I need to get this ready. But very few of us think of, like, the spiritual preparedness that you need to focus on. And I would say focusing on the spiritual preparedness takes precedence over the physical preparedness. So there's that. On to meds. So that was one thing that I noticed up in North Carolina, is that a lot of people who were dependent upon medications did not put those back in times of disaster. And honestly, in their defense, in North Carolina, that was a location that a bunch of preppers, like, flocked to because it has very little in the way of natural disasters, has an abundance of rain, and there aren't any, like, targets in those mountains that would need to be, like, blown up by any kind of enemies and stuff.
Sure.
So
Sure.
in their defense, they didn't think a disaster was going to happen because historically it didn't happen there. But medications, like if you're like on a prescription medication and you have to take this medication over and over again, start putting it back. Like start stockpiling it or finding herbal solutions to the problem. Some like an alternative solution.
Yeah.
For example, like if you're on blood thinners for whatever reason, adjust your diet. But if you're on blood thinners for whatever reason, try to find, like, maybe it's a good idea to plant some willow trees, and you can use that willow bark as an alternative blood thinner. For whenever you can't get your pharmacia blood thinner. Also, if possible, try to figure out a way to get off your medications. Like, is there any way you can, like, clean up your diet to get off medications? Is there, like, a substance, like an alternative substance that you can take to get off medication? All stuff like that. Like, try, if at all possible, try to get off the medication. Try to become, like, independent of the pharmacy industry. And if that's not an option, then just start stockpiling it and trying to come up with, like, alternatives to your medication.
Yeah,
like because there were a couple of instances where there was like we were putting. You weren't there for this one, but there was one instance where this guy produced too much blood, and he had gone like 2 weeks over the limit of what he was supposed to do to get like he had have to blood drain every so often, and he was 2 weeks over the limit. Yeah, he produced too much blood. And it was to the point where, like, we had to, and he lived in a spot where he couldn't get out and he wasn't physically able to get out. So it was like, all right, who wants to be the doctor or nurse who wants to go up there and, like, drain this dude's blood? And we couldn't get any takers. Like, nobody wanted to do that. And there were quite a few doctors and nurses that were like, he needs to go to the hospital. Like, he's too far past it. There were a couple of factors involved. The guy that needed his blood drained was being stubborn and did not want to leave his house. And then the alternative was, like, none of the doctors or nurses wanted anything to do with the situation that they would have been in with that guy.
Bro, so I've never even heard of that.
Neither had I. Neither had I. Like, until they were like, hey.
It's like your body produces too much life. Like, what is going on?
I guess.
I mean, like, if he's got too much, I guess I could help him. I got a pocket knife. But, it's like, dude, I've never heard of it.
Yeah. It was weird. It was a weird situation. But,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Meds. Try to get off of them as much as possible. And if you can't, for whatever reason, try to, stockpile the medications or find herbal alternatives to your medications.
Yeah, and this is also like where the community comes into play, because there is quite a few instances where, like, I remember talking to people and they would tell us, like, oh, so-and-so over here is on oxygen. They'll probably need some cylinders replaced, and everybody kind of knew the needs of their neighbor, which was pretty cool. And, granted, in worst case scenario, you're probably not going to have people come in to, like, help. This is just on you guys. So stockpile and stuff. But I just remember that
even if there isn't like a world disaster, still, like, the government's not going to come help you. look at North Carolina and in California. The government ain't coming to help you. It'll be people like us that'll come and help you.
Shout out to the soon to be formed Gideon's Charge that we will be starting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so moving on into fuel. So we kind of briefly talked about this in, like, running your generators, for your wells and stuff like that. But fuel, the reason I wrote this down was because this was something that nobody, even the people who were prepared, this was something that nobody had enough of. Whether it was propane or gas or diesel Like nobody had enough fuel. Um, so maybe think of like ways you can generate fuel yourself. You could do like a biogas, like let's say you have farm animals. Well, that's free methane right there. They're producing methane all day long in the form of like farts and manure. So you could collect that manure, put it in a big old bag, and then capture the gases that come off that, and then you have methane to
Yeah.
either cook with, or if you have generators that run on some sort of propane, then they can run to a limited efficiency on methane. Um, but yeah, just think of like alternative fuels that you can use, or if you're powering your house, maybe think about solar or wind generation. Wind generation is pretty, inefficient and stuff like that, but it's a possibility.
Dude,
Like
you
these are
just
all
put this.
options.
Okay, so perhaps this is just a moment of immaturity in my mind. But the second you were talking about the methane, I was like, yeah, someone's gonna take this wrong and run up with a trash bag trying to capture cow farts off the cows.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Even if you don't have animals, you can still produce methane. I mean, you can capture your own excrement and capture the methane off that if you wanted to. That's an option. You don't poop nearly as much as a cow, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
might be enough to like heat up some water, to boil some water, or to boil some water for your food and stuff like that. Um, there's even like wood gasifiers that people make where like the burning of the wood actually produces energy. There's like in fact, in that part of North Carolina, there was he was on that moonshine show. Um,
Oh yeah,
or
yeah.
was it
I know what you're talking about.
moonshine or some other
One of those, like,
Eustace? It was like Eustace Conway, Mountain Man, maybe. But his truck was actually run off of a wood gasifier. He had this big old burn barrel in the bed of his truck, and that's what actually provided the fuel for his truck. Like, because once you burn wood, it starts off gassing, starts producing the gases, and you can either reburn that like you would in a rocket stove, or you can capture those gases and burn them in the combustion engine of your vehicle if you wanted to. Um,
yeah.
but just think of like alternatives to fuel if you don't have access to the gas station, or if you don't have an option for somebody to come up and refill your propane tanks. Like, what are you going to do for fuel? Um, and that's another thing that's going to largely depend on you and your location. Like, you might live in a desert where you don't have access to trees, so that's something you're going to have to think about.
Yeah.
And there isn't just like a blanket copy and paste answer for that. You got anything on fuel?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, it is what it is. You got to do the best you can do and put as much as way as you can with stabilizer and whatever else you plan. I mean, yeah, it's going to be an individual effort there. But
Yeah. Now communication. Now I'll let you take this one because you have more experience with communication than I definitely
well,
do. Like my first interaction with communication was the disaster relief in North Carolina, and that was just enough to show me I don't know anything about communication.
I think you have a few different things, right? Like obviously our primary, I think for everybody, your primary source is your cell phones, right? But those go down pretty quick. It doesn't take a whole lot to shut that
Mm-hmm.
network down, especially regionally, like we saw. Because guess what? Those cell towers need power. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
So on that note, real quick, like in North Carolina, the hurricane happened, and then 2 days later, the cell phone towers were shut down. Like they were shut down after the fact. Um, Actually, it was a day or 2 days later, something like that. And their reasoning for shutting down the communications, like it was a intentional thing. The reason they said they shut down the communications was so that EMS had free access, like they were going to be uninhibited with communication by shutting down the cell towers. It didn't make any sense, but that's what they were saying when they
that's
intentionally shut down the communication towers.
well, that just hurts my head to even try to rationalize that. Um,
Yeah,
You know, I think that was intentional for another reason for sure. But um,
absolutely.
so going into it, like you know, get licensed to be a hammy. You know, get a ham radio going. It doesn't take much. It's not that expensive. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but um, that will last longer than other forms of communication for sure. And that's how we operated in that area. That whole region was out, so we were relaying off of some repeaters. It worked great, but here's the thing: like, you know, even that has a fail point too. You know, the fires that just went through LA, like Mount, oh, I forget what the mountain was, but there, from my understanding, and I could be incorrect, but from my understanding, even those repeater sites got damaged and were not up and running. Um,
Hmm.
Luckily, I don't think they lost their full infrastructure of communication. So it's just prepare redundancies, you know, and past that, hey, you're just going to have to figure it out, but at least have some options, you know. If they do work, great. If not, well, then you're going to have to lean on your other preps and potentially getting out and just getting face to face with people. But um,
Yeah,
definitely ham
and
radio.
like there were
Yeah,
communities. Yeah, and there were communities in North Carolina that the only reason they actually received any help, like Little Germany keeps coming up, but Little Germany, there was one like ham radio operator in that community, and he's the
yeah,
sole reason that that community got any kind of help because it was a community on the other side of the river, pretty inaccessible, and then their only point of access got washed down the river, and there's a lot of shady stuff that went on there. But
yeah.
had it not been for the ham radio operator, a lot of people would have probably been dead. A lot of people would not have gotten access to the supplies that they needed and stuff like that.
Oh
So,
yeah, without a doubt.
yeah,
There's great value in it for sure. I recommend that everybody look into it and get set up for it. But really, it
yeah,
just comes to doing the class. I definitely recommend the classes. Know how to operate your equipment. Know how to operate on the network, and then you know you're good to go. Like it's one of those things you can get on and practice and talk to people. Like it's people have a lot of fun doing it. A lot
yeah,
of people just enjoy it. It becomes their
yes.
passion.
Some people like make a game out of it and see how far they can reach and stuff like that. Like, what's the furthest point of communication they can actually get to and stuff.
Yeah,
Um, so, last thing I have on the list is transportation.
yeah,
How are you going to get around after the point of a disaster?
yeah.
Now, go ahead and bring up your favorite mode. I already know what it is.
Oh, bro, like yeah, like I think like horses and pack mules are awesome. Um,
Yeah.
they're they're super cool. You can get through just about any terrain. Um, and the only thing is, like, you got to feed them, you know. So if
Yep.
you're in an area where they can graze and stuff, when you take breaks, like that's great. But otherwise, it's just something to take into account. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because fuel, you
And
know,
it's going to
fuel
be
on everything. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I think there's a delay in that and we talked over. You're good. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, because fuel on all other modes of transportation, like it is going to be a consideration. You may only get one trip, you know, out of whatever vehicle or mode of transportation you have. So you got to make that count. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
that's about it.
absolutely. And then also like your transportation needs to be it should kind of depend on the type of terrain you're in. For example, like where I live, I could get around anywhere I needed to go with a little mountain bike because it's super flat and nothing's really gonna. And I could even put a cart on the back end of that mountain bike and transport other people or goods or supplies or materials. But if I were to copy and paste that mountain bike over to North Carolina, where there's mountains and stuff, like nobody said before, I'm going to be downshifting like crazy
Yeah.
and I'm going to be burning a ton of calories. Like it's not going to be easy to get around um, with a mountain bike out there. So is just kind of keep that in mind. Like, okay, maybe you have a bunch of solar panels. Maybe a golf cart makes sense because that's something you can keep recharging. You're not worried about gas or diesel or anything like that, and you can just keep recharging your golf cart off your solar panels.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe.
maybe you live in an area where like there's nothing close, and you're gonna have to use something that's fast moving that can haul something, and maybe a side by side makes sense, or a four wheeler or something like that makes sense. Um, I don't know. Maybe you have your own oil spring and your own refinery and stuff like that, and you just want all the vehicles. You can get that if you want to too. But yeah, think about transportation, or even if that's something you need to think about. Like, am I going to be trying to get around anywhere in times of a disaster? Or if I do need to get somewhere, is that going to be reliable? Okay, let's say there's an EMP. Every vehicle after 84 or something like that is going to be shut down. So think about that. Like, is my vehicle going to work after the time of disaster? What if there's a high altitude nuclear explosion? That's another form of EMP. Um,
Yeah.
you could actually prepare for EMPs with something called an EMP shield. Speaking of Midwest Preparedness Project, there's a couple of people from Midwest Preparedness Project that actually developed EMP Shield, and it's a device that you hook up to your car battery or your home control panel, and it will actually protect everything downstream of that system for the entire duration of an EMP. So a lot of people think like an EMP just lasts like it's one blast, EMP's over, and then we're good to go. Well, apparently not. Apparently an EMP, especially if it's caused by the sun, lasts for like 8 to 9 hours, and there's multiple waves of it, and it's like a complete. There's a whole
Yeah.
timeline regarding the EMP. So, cool thing about EMP Shield is that it will last the entire duration of an EMP or lightning strike. So that's another form of preparedness. Like if your house gets struck by lightning, but you have an EMP shield on, it'll blast that EMP shield off the wall, but everything downstream of that EMP shield is protected. And I think they have like a $25,000 or $30,000
Yeah.
guarantee. Like if
Yeah.
anything
They
gets
warranty it.
damaged downstream, then they'll replace it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hey,
So
I'm gonna step away for a second. Forgive me. I don't know if you want to get into
you're
knives
good.
next, but
Oh yeah. So yeah. Go ahead, do your thing. Um, so that's as far as like transportation. That's what I've got. It kind of depends. It solely depends on your location and all that type of stuff. But talking about personal preparedness and things that you can keep on your body every single day, just prepare for the day to day aspects are like pocket knife. Pocket knife, like this one is the K-Bar Dozier. You can only see it if you're on camera, and even then, you can only see the silhouette. But it is a folding knife. This is a cheaper folding knife. I think it's like 15 bucks, $25, somewhere around there. But keeping a sharp object on you to cut stuff with is extremely paramount. Like every single day, I use a knife. A knife is a preparedness tool that everybody in the world, across the world, uses constantly. Like it's a very, very handy tool to have on hand. And it helps if you have a knife that you can rely upon. Um, for example, this knife that I'm pulling out over here, this one is a Kershaw launch. It's an automatic knife. You push a button and it goes off and it opens. But is that going to be a reliable form of a knife? Is that something I can beat on with? Is that something I can make kindling with if I'm trying to start a fire? So that brings me over into fixed blades. This is the TJ Schwartz Overland Sport, which is a knife that I just recently got, and I absolutely love it. It's a fixed blade. Fixed blades are reliable. You don't have to worry about like pivot mechanisms or anything like that. You don't have to worry about there's just a lot less to worry about when it comes to fixed blades. There's less moving parts. Also, if you're worried about the cost of it, you can get a higher quality knife by getting the fixed blade version versus the folding or the flipper version of it. Cost goes way down once you get the fixed blade version. Talking about knives here.
yeah.
And just kind of transitioned into it. Like the knife is uh, it's the tool, it's the preparedness item that everybody should have on them at all times, and it's like the handiest and most useful tool in the entire world. Like everybody, no matter where you are, has some sort of sharp object that they can cut stuff with.
Yeah.
And just kind of like the fixed blade is more reliable. You can get a better product for less money. That type of stuff. Like it's just the way to go, I think. Especially like the pocket size EDC fixed blades.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
just the way
I
to go.
totally agree. Um, I use a knife every single day. I can't even think of a time or a day that I haven't used it for one thing or another. Um, so when it comes to that, like utility is what I carry a knife for. I always like that's my
Mm-hmm.
focus and purpose of it. And I carry a pistol for defense. However, I suppose, yeah, this blade is still a defensive weapon or an offensive weapon.
Yeah.
I just choose not to make that my focus because knife fighting is scary. I don't want to
Yeah.
get cut.
Everybody loses.
Yeah, I was always
Yeah.
taught, hey,
Everybody
you,
loses in a knife fight.
yeah, I was always taught, hey, you shoot a guy with a knife. Like don't let him come near you. That's a bad day.
Yeah.
Um, but if
Yep.
if need be, at least you have something. You know. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and when it comes
Yeah.
to that,
And as
definitely,
far as
I was just gonna say I would definitely rather have a fixed blade than a folder if I was gonna, get down and dirty with that thing. But
yeah, or if you have to baton like materials with it, your fixed blade is only going to hold up to so much of that. I mean, your not fixed blade, your folding knife is only going to hold up so much to that. A fixed
yeah,
blade can baton materials all day long. It's fine with it. It has no problem with it at all. If you got a good quality knife and stuff.
yeah,
But you had mentioned like shooting the guy with the knife. Should we get into defensive measures real quick?
yeah. I don't think we. Well, so look at it like this, right? If we are being obedient in this walk and trying to embody the heart posture that we have to have, right, towards going any uncertain encounter we may have with danger, right? Like we are to defend those who are defenseless. We can defend ourselves and our family. Like this is good, proper way to walk. Like um, don't be that sheep that just rolls over before the wolves even get to them.
Yeah.
Our Father, like read the Song of Moses. Like the Song of Moshe is awesome. It's all about battle. I mean, look at Yah raises up mighty men to battle, and all over Scripture, Yahusha's coming back with his vesture dipped in blood. Right? I'm not saying that they're weak by any stretch of the imagination. When we walk, though, according to them, like we are not to harm people and for like unrighteous gain or murder or anything like that, but defense. And yeah, sometimes a good offense is the best defense, and I don't disagree with that. But every
Yeah.
situation dictates. So with that disclaimer in mind, um, you got to look at a few things. Like I carry a pistol with me like every day, everywhere. Like, and when I'm not walking around
Same.
carrying, I'm sleeping at night. It's under my pillow. Like I'm like it's with me all the time. Um,
Same.
we have to understand what these are for. Like if you're out with your pistol, right, and something happens, that pistol is like just enough to get you back to say your truck. You can get your truck gun out, get a long rifle out. You have a higher capacity of rounds, and you have greater accuracy, greater velocity. Um, hopefully, hopefully whatever situation happens, you can just be dealt with quickly. That gets into more of
Yeah.
like a sustained situation, but you got to have these ideas, because if you over prepare, you're going to be good for the lesser situations.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And getting into pistols you carry, like find a platform that you like because all these different pistol manufacturers, there's different grip angles and functionality of them. find something that you like and works with you that you're good and proficient on, and stick to it. Like I'm a Glock. I love Glocks. That's just me. So all of my different platforms are Glock. Like I love shooting other guns. They're fun. It's a whole lot of fun.
Yeah.
But when I'm training and putting reps down, I want reps that matter for my muscle memory. So if I pull out my pistol, like I don't even want to have to think about any kind of sight picture, sight alignment. I'm just like, it's muscle memory. I know this grip angle. I know my draw. I know what it looks like when I present, and I can be effective. Same
Yeah.
thing with rifles. If you have multiple rifles of like, because I know a bunch of people have multiple ARs, like, and there's one that they'll abuse like crazy on the range, and then one that they keep, in nicer condition. I guess that's cool. Set them up the same though, so all of your stuff is, functioning the way you trained. You have to train with the equipment you're going to use. That's like the biggest
Yeah.
thing I can say about any kind of defensive weapons is like train with the platform you're going to use and make that an extension of your body, you know?
That's very well put. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And like I would get anybody who's getting into guns or is new to like guns or anything like that, don't let somebody else's biases dictate what you end up going with. Cuz like there's a weird culture within the gun community
Yeah.
where it's like I only use SIG pistols and like no matter what it is, I only use SIG pistols and everything else is crap. Like just go to a range because 9 times out of 10 you can go to a range and test out different guns, or there's some range nearby where you can test out different guns and see what you actually like find like a gun dealer who is wanting to find that with you, like wanting to help
Yeah.
you out and like find a gun that you're comfortable with using, something that fits in your hand well, something that like you're fine with functioning with. Like you don't need like my wife, she carries LCP was it LCP2 in like 22 caliber. Right now, that is perfect for her. She's not super comfortable with guns. It's very low recoil. It's something that she is comfortable with using, and in the future we
Yeah.
can upgrade her to something that's a little bit larger caliber. But 22 is going to get the job done. Like every time I process animals, every time because I raise animals, I process them on the farm, all that type of stuff. Every single time I use a 22. The only times I've ever had issues with an animal not dying after the first shot is when I use something other than a 22. It's a very fast moving caliber, and once it gets in the brain, it rattles around, turns the brain into Swiss cheese. Like it's a very awesome caliber. But a lot of people will crap on that, saying, "Oh, that's not big enough. You need like 45 ACP or something like that, and nothing less than that." Not everybody's fighting bears. Not everybody's fighting strung out PCP ridden meth heads or anything like that. Like 22. If I'm doing something and I get shot with and I get shot with an airsoft gun, I'm gonna rethink what I was just doing.
Yeah.
You can tap me with a BB gun and I'm gonna be like, hold on, let's reanalyze this whole situation real quick.
Yeah. Be like, hey, ow.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like, so this gets into like the pistol you just described, right? That 22.
Mhm.
Like I have the understanding, I have a realistic understanding of like when I'm out and about, if a threat presents itself in front of me that I have to deal with because of somebody else's life, limb, or eyesight or my own, right? Because I will take that on. Like if someone else is in danger, it's like, hey, that kind of became my responsibility until someone of higher capability is there to mitigate that risk, you know?
Yeah.
So that being said, though, I understand that like the pistol I carry with the extra magazines I carry, I am still limited, and I don't know what this other person has. This purpose is
Yeah.
to get out of that situation. It's to break contact and get away. Now,
Absolutely.
when I'm putting shots down, I am through my training getting them as accurate as possible, because if you can just put that threat down, okay, great, problem solved. But nevertheless, like the purpose of this is to get out of danger's way, not to continue to like provoke more danger to come your way. You know, does that make sense?
Right.
Um,
Yeah. You're not challenging the you're not challenging the city. You're trying to, like you said, break contact and get away.
yeah.
That's really what you're trying to do.
And don't get me wrong, like I will attempt to place these shots as accurate as possible in the most effective zones as possible. I'm not saying just, shoot up in the air, and run to your car, I'm not saying
Yeah.
to go like, what's that? There was that video of somewhere in a jungle, this monkey picked up this guy's AK and it's like, shoot it over its
Yeah.
head. Yeah, don't do that. I mean, you actually got to
Yeah.
try, but
Don't give guns to chimps.
yeah, just understand what you're outfitted for. Like it's not like
Mhm.
I'm not carrying a full combat load with me when I'm like beep bopping around the city going into Walmart. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I'm also there's other areas where you can be cautious when it comes to that. Like I really do love the whole gray man theory, and I think some people do it really well. Some people like totally embody that. I try to. I don't wear any tactical stuff. I don't wear camo out when I go out. I just don't wear camo. Um,
Yeah.
but like, I want someone to,
Unless
if
it's
they
my
look,
underwear.
okay, well, I, tight. That's cool. Got a little multicam speedo on.
Yep. Yep.
but but for real, like present yourselves in a way that, like, say someone comes into a grouping of people and they mean to do harm to people there, like don't be the person they point out like, oh, this might be an issue for me to complete what I'm doing, I need to take him first.
Yeah.
If you give yourself
Yeah.
some standoff time that way, like if you're just like a normal, Joe Blow, like just hanging out, I'm looking for some toothpaste in Walmart, like
Yep.
that gives you a reactionary time if you're not the first target to be taken down, to where then you can get to your defensive tool and take down a threat before more life is lost. Like that's the whole name of the game, like stop life from being lost, and prevent injury.
That has always stuck out in my head as far as like the open carry crowd. Like
Yeah,
unless I'm like on the farm or at the range or whatever, some scenario like that, I'm not open carrying. It seems like you just made yourself like the first target. Like
yeah.
if some
Oh,
like
totally.
active shooter were to come into, like you were saying, like Walmart, that person is going to shoot the person who's clearly carrying a gun first, and then everybody else. Like it's
Right.
never made sense. The whole open carry, like I understand it's more comfortable, and that's why I do it at the farm. Like if I'm, and even then, not all the time. Like my inside the waistband holster now is so doggone comfortable that like there was one time I was working out and doing squats, and then realized like, oh crap, I'm carrying my gun right now. And anybody interested, it's called Fat Tac. If you check out Fat Tac, FATTAC, once you see the boys who made it, you understand why it's called Fat Tac. But it's the most comfortable like holster I've ever had in my life, like not even close. Um, but yeah, like the whole open carry thing has never really made sense. It seems like now there was a time during COVID where open carry made sense. Let's say you were strongly opposed to wearing a mask. Well,
Hmm.
welcome to the club. But also, um, it is illegal, which laws supersede mandates. It is illegal for me to wear a mask and carry a gun at the same time. And
Ah,
if you're open carrying and you're walking into a grocery store or something like that, and somebody says, "Hey, you can't be in here without a mask," and you just point to your hip and be like, "I'm carrying this weapon. I can't wear a mask and carry this weapon at the same time. It's
yeah.
illegal."
Yeah, well, I think everybody take note on that, because I would my opinion is that we will be under another mandate very soon. But
Yeah. And
but
also,
yeah,
people just don't tend to argue with you if you're open carrying.
well, yeah, but here's and that's the thing. Like, are there benefits to it? Yeah, I won't deter from that. And I open carry like on the farm. Yeah, it's more
Yeah.
comfortable, and yeah, I definitely do. But that's once I go out though, like I'm concealed. I just want to blend in. Like if I could be part of the wall, I would be part of the wall.
Yeah.
No undue attention. But that's just it makes you more effective should you need to stand up in defense of anyone. Um,
Yeah.
and then applying that like rifle wise, right? Like rifles are super versatile. You could hunt with them, you could defend with them. I mean, and it's all a matter of, I guess you could say, your setup. I think the majority of people will be like, okay, AR-15, that's the way to go. And I don't disagree. Like, you can, the idea of NATO rounds, especially in the event of, let's say, war on soil here, like you may be able to come across them and find more. Um, they're relatively cheap compared to some other rounds that are just like awfully expensive. But it's versatile. It's a
Yeah.
fast round. It's accurate. It's easy to manipulate that rifle. Yeah, I'd say anybody could shoot one. You know, um,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
but also
So,
like
okay, that go ahead.
I was just gonna say also, like, if you're sustaining at a certain place, like having a 22 around is a awesome tool. Like I will always have a
Yeah.
22 somewhere. But
Okay, so on that note, what are if somebody came up to you and said, "Hey, I don't have any weapons. What do I need to get?" And you gave them like 3 guns to get, or do they even need 3? But what would your
no,
be, because you have way, way, way more experience in this realm than I do. What would you be like? What would you recommend? Would it be 3 guns, or do you need more? Do you need less? And what would you recommend?
I mean, it's nice to have different platforms for different purposes, but in reality, for me, like if I had to leave everything I own and only take what I could carry, I would have a pistol and a rifle, you know? So
Okay.
I would want a rifle so I could reach out and touch someone at a further distance, and I, I just always want a pistol. I mean, no matter what. Um, yeah,
You gonna
like
reach out and touch them? What are you gonna tickle them? Is that what you're
yeah.
gonna do?
Well,
You're
it
just gonna
just
reach out and touch
like
them.
you have your options out there, uh, but yeah, I would say like a rifle platform and a pistol, and that doesn't necessarily need to be an AR-15. Like it could be a hunting rifle for someone. It's the same kind of
Hmm.
concepts. Just be proficient at it. I mean, I can cycle a bolt action quickly if I needed to. It's not necessarily something that's always going to be necessary, but yeah, I mean, it's a standoff distance. Even if you're pumping one round, obviously there's benefits to a semi-auto. I'm not downplaying that at all. I carry an AR, right? But I also like it's also round choice too. Like right now, my AR, I got some Hornady Blacks, the 75 grain. So I'm not
Mm.
shooting the 55 grain target ammo. Like I'm loaded with some bullets in there that are going to have a little more stopping power. They're going to create a little more damage. I I have the barrel to run them. I have a 1 in 7 twist. So it's all these things. Just
Mm.
learn what you're trying to do and then buy according to that plan and know what kind of ammos you want to use. It seems complicated, but really like anyone could research and look this up on the internet on how they want to build. Just know what your end goal is and just build to that. I mean, because like
Yeah.
ARs are like Legos these days. There's like a million different
Yeah.
sights, a million different grips. Everything's just whatever works for that person. Like you could have a rifle that I pick up and I'm like, oh gosh, this is the goofiest setup I've ever seen. Like you got just everything's off to me. But when you pick it up, you're just like deadly accurate with it. And that's all that matters. Like it's
Yeah.
comfortable to you. It works for you. So many people just talk crap on everything. And it's like, well, you're not that person, just stay your own lane,
Right.
man. Like just, there's some things, sure, that you could point out and be like, hey, you might want to change this. Like definitely like put a sling on your rifle. Don't ever have a rifle
Yeah.
without a sling. Because
Now, one thing that I would recommend, and this is, I have very, very limited experience with any of this stuff, but just from recognizing the situations we were in, the only time like it was a sketchy situation was like at night for the most part. So maybe have the ability to engage targets at night, like to be able to either defend yourself or see what's going on at night. That was one thing that stuck out to me while in North Carolina.
Yeah, that's a good point. And like and that's another big point too. Like that's, you have your stand 2 times when the sun's going down and when the sun's coming up. Those are usually at least war fighting wise, like the biggest times of attack to expect from the enemy. But like any time during the night, if you want to go assault somewhere and steal their stuff or raid them, whatever, you probably won't go at noon. Like you might, but you probably won't go where they could see you from a distance coming. Being shrouded by night means a lot. The whole U.S. military, right? We own the night. That was like the biggest, call to fame that they've had forever. Now everybody else owns the night too. But
yeah,
I would say if you can get MVGs, if not, get a kick-ass flashlight on your guns, and just realize that once you turn that light on, everybody's going to know exactly where to aim. So you better get those shots off quick. But there's just benefits to everything. There's cons to everything. You just got to weigh out how you want to build it. I totally agree though. Like having some MVGs would be great. That'd be great.
Or even a flashlight.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, like no matter what, I want all of these preparations made and defensive tools to be for nothing. That's my goal. Like, I never want to have to use them. I never want to have to hurt anyone. That sounds awful. However, like I think that it's definitely a necessary. Like this is the mark of man to be able to like to use extreme violence and have the self-control not to use that extreme violence. So have the capability to where in a situation where you need to come to the aid of someone else or even defend yourself, it's present. You could tap into that and what it looks like when that time comes. But have the self-control to realize that you never want to have to use that ever. You know what I mean?
Which is meekness.
Yeah, pretty much. Like Moshe was a tough dude. Like he had the capabilities. I mean, look, he whacked that rock with his staff. He split that rock in half. That's pretty tough.
Yeah.
But yeah. That. Anyways, look. There's so many people out there, and I think we touched on this last video, that'll be like, I got all these guns. I'm going to take the food I need. I'm going to go, I'm like, so you're going to be a robber? Like, what a jerk. Yeah. You ain't my friend if you're saying that, Like, the people I want to surround myself with. Sorry.
No, you're good. I cut you off. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the people I want to surround myself with are people that have the ability to protect and have the will, like the heart, to help. Like if there's hungry people, like, hey, let's go get them some food. Let's get them on their way. Like, don't be a jerk, Yeah.
And like the marauder people, in a time of chaos and mayhem, they're wanting to perpetuate the chaos and mayhem. They are not doing anything beneficial. Just like if anybody in your mutual assistance group pops up and is like, well, why don't we just take it from other people? Kick them out immediately. Like, don't even ask questions. Just kick them out immediately, because that is the exact. If they're asking that question now, then it's just going to become reality once things go bad. And like I said, in a time of chaos and confusion, they are wanting to push more chaos and confusion, which is not what we're called to do at all.
And honestly, I
Yeah.
think most of the people that put on a front like that, like, you probably wouldn't have the intestinal fortitude to carry it out. You know what I mean? A lot of people are a
Yeah.
whole lot of big bad talk, and you know, I don't know. That's a coward's way to me, to go steal from other people, you know, and to go harm
Oh
other
yeah.
people. That's a coward. Don't be a
Yeah,
coward.
also not very intelligent either. Like they're not a very intelligent person where the only solution they can come up to for this problem is that they're going to go take it from somebody else, and they're not even considering the fact how difficult of a task that might be. Like
Yeah, yeah. You
you
remember
think
last?
you're going to
Hey,
be so successful at it.
yeah. I got my Looney Tunes preps all over this place. There's gonna be, I'm painting tunnels on the side of walls. You're gonna walk right into that wall, dummy. I'm getting big punching, big boxing gloves on springs, like all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, on that note, I think that about does it for this episode. Remember, if you want to sign up to give your testimony, email us at exiledstrangers@proton.me, exiledstrangers@proton.me, and we'll have you on the show and you can give your testimony to the podcast universe, I guess.
Yes.
All right. You got any final words, nobody?
Nope. Fun episode, man. It was a good one.
Yeah, it was. Hopefully, it was entertaining and educational for you guys. And until next time, we'll see you.